Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the Information Architecture for Artificial Intelligence Virtual Symposium. Today we have a wonderful opening keynote with Heather Hedden. And Heather is an expert in taxonomy creation. She has over 28 years of experience in designing and developing taxonomies, thesauri, ontologies, and metadata schemas. Her work spans internal and external content systems, helping organizations enhance content organization and discoverability. In addition to her consulting work, she is also an expert trainer and educator in focused areas around taxonomy development. Speaking of which, tomorrow she has a private workshop in this symposium that is going to be running for $247. So be sure to take advantage of that. Usually, she runs her workshops for about $400. But without further ado, Heather, it's a pleasure to have you, and let's put your presentation up.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Joaquin. All right, is my presentation being
Yeah,
displayed now? Great.
yeah,
All
you're
right.
visible.
Okay. So now the conference is on information architecture for artificial intelligence, but there might be some question: do they really get along? So I'm giving this approach of versus information architecture versus artificial intelligence, but within the scope of taxonomies, because taxonomy is my area of expertise, and of course, information architecture is a very big field. So that's what we're going to focus on. And we've already had the introduction about me. I am doing independent consulting now. My business name is Head in Information Management, although I've worked for other companies up until recently and had done consulting and independent consulting in the past. And I'm also author of the book, The Accidental Taxonomist. Okay, so information architecture versus artificial intelligence. So the information architect's goal is to help people find information, and particularly find specific information they seek through interactive user interfaces, although information architecture is broader than that. That's kind of the most common field. And so the goal of information architecture, and it's also the goal of artificial intelligence, or specifically artificial intelligence in the area of information knowledge management. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to use the color green for information architecture, IA, and blue for artificial intelligence, AI, and also these cute little icons too, to tell you the difference. So there's a similar goal, but are they in competition, or do they complement each other? And that's what we're going to find out. So the outline here, I'll give a little introduction review of taxonomies if you're not so familiar with them, and how they support information architecture. Then taxonomies and information architecture in the user experience, and taxonomies and AI in the user experience. And then information architecture and taxonomy design and creation, and then AI in taxonomy design and creation. And AI also in taxonomy implementation, that's tagging. And finally, a little few thoughts on the future of IA, AI, and taxonomies. So what are taxonomies? You've probably seen some of these displays of terms and topics and categories in different websites or web content management systems, or other kinds of content or data systems. There are different displays to choose from, hierarchies and filters and type aheads and so forth. So taxonomies help people find information at a more detailed level than site navigation, which is something that information architects may be involved in. So if I were to ask, what do you think a taxonomy is? There are kind of two major approaches, or we could say features, of taxonomies. One is a hierarchy of terms or topics or categories, arranged with the narrower topics or subcategories displayed under the broader parent categories. We saw a few of those on the previous screen. This guides users to find the desired topic, and which is then linked to the content or pages or documents they would be of interest. So it's similar to navigation and sitemaps, but it's more topical. It's not just based on page titles. The other approach is a taxonomy is a kind of controlled vocabulary that's arranged in a structure of metadata tags or labels to apply to the pages or posts or documents, so that can be more precisely and comprehensively retrieved than search alone. The search algorithms and the keywords are never perfect. So this could be implemented as search suggested terms. When somebody types in the search box and then their search string matches against suggested terms, or search refinement filters, or suggestions of related topics in searches. So actually, defining a taxonomy, they're different definitions, but one way to go to the definitions is actually in standards for thesauri. A thesaurus is a little more standardized as far as the rules for broader and narrower and how they're formed. So the thesaurus standards are also used for taxonomies. So the major one, ANSI, NISO, that's American National Standards Institute, National Information Standards Organization, does have the term taxonomy in its glossary and definitions, that it's a collection of controlled vocabulary terms organized into a hierarchical structure. Each term in a taxonomy is in one or more parent-child, that's broader or narrower relationships to other terms in the taxonomy. So that is kind of what I was saying before anyway, that when we had those two different definitions, it's a little more the second approach of controlled vocabulary terms. There's another standard that's very similar, ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, has a standard for thesauri, and it defines a taxonomy as a scheme of categories and subcategories that can be used to sort and otherwise organize terms of knowledge or information. So this actually seems to represent that first approach that I reflected to taxonomy. So they overlap, these definitions. But what's more important than defining is what they're used for. So concepts or terms, and I'll explain that a little bit more, are used to tag or index or categorize content or pages to make them easier to be found and retrieved. So it's not just classification for the sake of it. It is to find content, find information, supporting better findability than search alone. What's particularly important, as I see it, is that the taxonomy is an intermediary between users and content that links the users to the desired content. Keeping this in mind, then the taxonomy should suit the context of the content and the users. It's a particular use case. There could be some reuse, but generally taxonomy is designed for a particular use case, and that's why there's work for us taxonomists. Maybe I should explain what a taxonomy is not. That helps clarify as well, because there's some related things. Remember, I mentioned the metadata and tags, but it's not just any metadata and tags. It needs to be controlled and structured, and the concepts or terms are related, broader and narrower, or other ways. And it's not just a business glossary. Sometimes people think of a list of terms and their definitions, because it supports finding, not defining. Of course, you can add definitions as well, but that's secondary. And it's not a classification scheme. I've spoken about this recently and have blogged about this too, because often people are told, oh, a taxonomy is a classification scheme. And it's not exactly the same. There are many details, but it is for tagging and indexing, for finding, not for classifying. And it's not a navigation scheme, which is something that many information architects also work on, because it also supports searching, not just browsing. Like I said, with the matching and the search suggest or type ahead to terms in the taxonomy. There's a more comparison here with site navigation. because I know some of you who are involved in information architecture and are particularly familiar with the site menus and navigation. And while a taxonomy is similar, it's also different. Because the site navigation often reflects the structure, whereas the taxonomy isn't the structure of the site, it's the relationship of these terms or topics to each other, which could have no relation to the organization of the site. I mean, there may be, but it's not based on that. The site navigation often includes task-based labels, activities, whereas a taxonomy are topics, subjects, things. Site navigation has labels that are based on the page titles, whereas in taxonomy, the labels are just the terms, the topics, what people are interested in. And site navigation is designed to be browsed hierarchically top down. That is the only way, whereas a taxonomy could be browsed, but it could also be searched and not fully displayed or partially displayed. Site navigation is limited in the number of levels of hierarchy, to not more than 3, whereas a taxonomy can go quite deep and it still be quite functional. And one thing's very important, that in a site navigation, it's one-to-one. A navigation menu label item links to a page. Now, it could be a landing page that goes to other pages, but a taxonomy, these are concepts, these are terms that are tagged to multiple pages or documents, so it's one-to-many. So a site navigation, therefore, is also more limited in size. It doesn't cover all the pages. I said you then go on from a landing page and have to navigate more, where the taxonomy does cover everything, all pages, all content. Site navigation could be biased, and where a taxonomy is more neutral to its topic importance. Site navigation is not so flexible to update. You want to change that navigation, where a taxonomy can grow and adapt without limits. And finally, a site navigation is more about paths and links, not metadata, whereas taxonomy often is, or most often is, used as metadata. So features of a taxonomy are that it's controlled and organized. It's a kind of control vocabulary, a knowledge organization system. Now I'm explaining why we use the word concepts, because it's really things, not strings of text, it's also organized, that the concepts are organized. Those are the 2 features. Now, this screenshot here shows from one of several taxonomy management systems. Others are similar, where you have both the controlled area and the organized area for the same concept. So I have this concept called organizational skills, and you can see, it's different labels, and it's definition and scope note. That's all about the control. And on the left, the organized, where does it fit in the hierarchy? It's under soft skills, which is under skills, and we have other kinds of skills in this taxonomy. And this is also seen at the front end. That was the back end, of course, what taxonomists manage in a taxonomy management system. But the front end, there's controlled. If someone types something into a search box, and then it matches against the strings within the labels of the concepts and the taxonomy, and we can even see where they are appearing, versus and then on the right, the organized, where the same topic data, we're also having data here where it fits into the hierarchy. So that was my rather long introduction to taxonomies. So how taxonomies support information architecture. So let's go to the definition or definitions of information architecture, to the best source, the information architecture book, also known as the polar bear book, because that's what's on the cover. There are several definitions here, and I'm not going to read through all of them, but I want to highlight what particularly ties in with taxonomies: the organization, labeling, search, and navigation. I think you understand that taxonomies support that, to support usability, findability, and understanding, and then also organizing and labeling of websites, intranets, so forth, to support findability and usability. So taxonomies are a very important part of information architecture. So I'm going to focus on some of these components: the organization systems, labeling systems, navigation systems, searching systems. These all may have taxonomies with them. So in organization systems, taxonomies are knowledge organization systems. We think of them broader, taxonomies and thesauri and classification schemes and ontologies. These are all knowledge organization systems. The taxonomy provides labels for concepts, so it is a labeling system. Many taxonomies can be navigated by browsing, so it is a kind of navigation system. And taxonomy supports search, so it's a kind of searching system. Okay, so taxonomies and information architecture in the user experience. What do users prefer to do? Do they want to explore topics and interact to find information? This is provided by information architecture. Or do they want to have answers and information served up to them, which is better provided by AI, artificial intelligence? Well, of course, it depends. It may depend on the user, but it may depend on the kind of information. So the same user sometimes wants to do one or the other, or other aspects of the context. Now, a taxonomy can support both or either. And even the same taxonomy can support both this, interactive browsing and having answers served up and combined with different technologies. And there are different ways that taxonomies can be displayed. So I have a screenshot here from a content management system. Internally, this is Alfresco. It's an open source one. You can see the user who clicks down and browses through, or selects from a combination of hierarchies and filters and facets to find online courses on the right. So with with IA information architecture, the user can explore topics and interact and find information via these hierarchies and facets. This is another one. I think that the user interface has changed in the meantime. The PLOS one, these are scholarly articles where you can browse through the first level and then choose a topic, and then you get the second level under ecology, environmental sciences, and then choose another level and go to the third level and even a fourth level. It's not necessarily the best, but there are different ways that just to show how users can kind of browse through a hierarchy. And then this other example from eBay also has a kind of a mixture of different ways the user can browse through, selecting at the top all categories on the left, selecting books, movies, and music, and view all in musical instruments and gear. So then selecting musical instruments and gear as the next level. And then the next level gets up onto a whole nother page and then has subcategories there. Then we can go to brass. And then we go to the next level of specific types of instruments and so forth. Okay. Next, taxonomies and AI in the user experience. So I was talking about taxonomies and IA in the user experience. Now taxonomies and AI, artificial intelligence in the user experience. Now I'm introducing why AI is that computers perform tasks to save human effort and time, of course, and humans can spend more time on other tasks requiring critical thinking. So information architecture tasks requiring varying degrees of critical thinking, so it's not going to substitute everything. What can AI do in information management? Well, summarize a document, translate text into another language, label a piece of content, answer a question, recommend similar content, or predict the completion of a task. There may be more, but this is particularly in the area of information management. And I'm going to address these, particularly these, answer a question, recommend similar content, or predict the completion of a task. So with AI, there's search support. This answer a question, instead of just search for something, you put a word or two. Actually, you can put a whole question into the search box. I don't know if we call it a search box anymore. A question asking box. And then there's recommendation I mentioned. So we're starting to see, especially that, looking at movies, what's recommended based on what else you've looked at and your profile and what others have looked at and how these are related to each other. And then the autocomplete, auto-suggest, of course, yeah, I mean, this is not based on necessarily what I searched, what others have searched on. So, using all that data to complete the suggestion of, and these aren't necessarily terms in the taxonomy, like I had said with auto-suggest of completing terms. You have a list. This is more predictive. So taxonomy works with AI to provide the context of search terms, and taxonomy can improve AI results. So this is, AI may or may not use taxonomy, but if taxonomy is added, it does improvements with the context, because the whole world of everything can have ambiguity. Okay, now information architecture in taxonomy design and creation. As I said before, the taxonomy is an intermediary that links the users to the desired content. So the taxonomy should be designed for the users and for the content. Now, to suit the users, we use information architecture methods in taxonomy design too, and I'll describe those. But to suit the content, we can do both. We can do manual and automated AI content analysis. Okay, so the information architecture methods for, not just designing other forms of information architecture, but also for taxonomy design, involve gathering information from users through stakeholder interviews, questionnaires, focus groups, persona or use case definition, taxonomy design workshops, card sorting exercises. I mean, if you are an information architect, you're familiar with these methods, and it's they're applicable to the more specific area of taxonomy design as well. But this is, of course, manual. Now, information gathering from the content and other sources for taxonomy design on the manual side would involve manual content analysis, review of search logs, looking over tagging statistics. I mean, it's data, but it's not AI to get this kind of search log and tagging statistics. And you utilize that and analyze it and decide, what should be added as new concepts, what should be added as alternative labels or synonyms. So then artificial intelligence in taxonomy design and creation. So with AI, you can extract candidate terms from a body of text. Now, this isn't generative AI or LLMs or anything new. This has been going on for quite some time. Using text analytics technology such as natural language processing and other rules of proximity and so forth to suggest terms to add based on frequency and co-occurrence. Now, using newer technologies of LLMs and generative AI, you can also have suggestions of narrower terms or alternative labels, same as synonyms, and even definitions to terms in a taxonomy. And this could even be a feature of taxonomy management software. They're starting to do that as well. I'll show some screenshot. And this last is maybe a little more advanced if you're not so familiar, that some taxonomies are built on the SCA, Simple Knowledge Organization System data model that's put out by the World Wide Web Consortium. They also have supported a query language called Sparkle to query data in SCAS or other RDF or other models on the semantic web standards. Okay, so if your taxonomy is based on this, you can, formulate Sparkle queries and find out like how many terms have two broader terms, a polyhierarchy, or how many have related terms, not others. And so this is useful when developing a taxonomy. But I, like many taxonomists, and am no expert in this query language. So I could just write down, find out, give me a list of all the terms that have more than one broader term. And you put that into generative AI, and I mean, give me a Sparkle query for that, and then you get it, and you put it into your system. And I've tried it out, and that works great. And you can then use just general web on the web, like GPT, versus when you want to create narrower terms or alternative labels to your taxonomy. It said above you should use internal LLM, so it's your content. So let's look at some screenshots here. That the extraction of terms. This is from taxonomy management system from Pool Party. I just have the screenshots for them from before. I'm not promoting any particular one system. There are many systems that could be used. So here we see a list of terms based on a corpus of content that are CVs or resumes, just to look at what the keywords are and the phrases. So we get, terms here like process improvement, digital asset manager, ranked by, relevance, content term score, mutual information score. That's when two words co-occur together. And then you can decide, should I add these to the taxonomy? And then their newer feature is the LLM-based feature to suggest narrower concepts to a taxonomy. So this is their demo taxonomy on cocktails and other beverages. So we have beer, and add narrower concepts, and then you extend the taxonomy. So that's a new feature there, and you can see that suggesting these other possibly narrower concepts, and then the user taxonomist can select from them. There are, being incorporated into the user interface of a taxonomy management system is relatively new, but I know others are doing this as well, whether they're using this tool or not. So now artificial intelligence in taxonomy implementation and tagging. And again, this is not new, but so unlike navigation menu labels, taxonomy concepts need to be tagged to all the content and constantly tagged to new content. The idea is new content is being added and needs to be tagged, and maybe new terms come up as well. So there's manual tagging, but this is not scalable for a large backlog or a large workflow. And so we use AI methods that have been in existence for quite some time, but they've become more common as there's, the amount of content has grown, and there's greater appreciation for taxonomies, and they're implemented more. So we see a lot of auto tagging. Now, I do want to say not all auto tagging uses AI. There are other methods that use rules written for each and to auto tag, which are kind of, Boolean logic and regular expressions or other rules like that. Now, human review still remains an option. Usually, it may be some user interface of these auto tagging systems allow don't select this one that has been, add another term. So AI-based auto tagging, also auto classification, makes matches based on linguistic, logical, or mathematical profile it expects to recognize. And so the technologies include machine learning that uses mathematical analysis to find patterns that match known properties. Named entity recognition matches proper nouns mentioned in the text. I know that's been around in a prior employer of mine since the 1990s. Semantic analysis, which is a little newer, locates concepts referenced within the content, and the natural language processing analyzes the sentences, not just words, but what parts of speech they are and how they relate to each other. And finally, the future of IA, AI, and taxonomies. So in user interface implementations, so in IA, as long as users want to explore, browse, and filter, refine topics in their own control, there will also be IA for user interface design. Now, advances in AI, artificial intelligence, will further improve search querying results and recommendations. And then back to IA, information architecture also provides understanding where AI does not quite. And particularly then in the development of taxonomies, there will always be user user-focused AI research methods and taxonomy creation to make the taxonomy more suitable for its users. We can't leave that out, so we're not going to go 100% with AI. AI can facilitate some taxonomy creation tasks, but human review is necessary, and we speak of human in the loop to review. So in conclusion, IA and AI don't have to be in competition. They complement each other, such as in the case of taxonomies, both in their design and development and implementation, as I have said. And information architects, therefore, should learn to work with AI. So that's it. I had, make the slides available, I hope, but I'll put them up on my website. So I also have a list of resources here about taxonomies and upcoming presentations, quite a bit that I'll be involved in. And that's it. So do we have some time for questions? I know I talked a little bit long, but
yeah, absolutely. We have time for questions. Feel free to ask them here in the chat. But I just want to say thank you very much for presenting this. I think it was a lovely introduction to taxonomies and the complementary nature of taxonomies and AI. How can we make full use of information if it's not well structured? And how can machine learning models or any other permutations of AI technologies make full use of content if it's not accessible in a predictable format, right?
Yep. Okay. Oh wait, that was a question. I thought it was more of a comment.
Bit of both. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the details of this workshop that you're running tomorrow?
Okay. I think there was still a question whether we would run it tomorrow or postpone it to a later date just to get a chance for more people to sign up, because this whole thing was presented, schedule came out on rather short notice, and I know it's hard to commit a long period of time. But then it's really about taxonomies. I'm not getting into the AI side, but the human side of it. As I said, the analysis of content and and just understanding the principles a little bit better. The hierarchical relationship is important, but what really is hierarchical and not, and I'll have some exercises on that, and faceted taxonomy, how that's designed, to think about the different aspects. So I'll have an exercise on that in addition to more deep introduction to the basic principles of taxonomy design. And I do focus really on designing taxonomies, like if you're in the role of a taxonomist, not about taxonomies as a manager or stakeholder.
In your experience teaching people how to develop taxonomies from scratch, what has been some emerging patterns that you've noticed in newcomers to the field?
Oh, it's diverse backgrounds. It diversifies. I had started teaching an online workshop through the continuing education program of a School of Library and Information Science, and that's a background that many people traditionally came from for taxonomies, but I don't teach it through them anymore. Actually, they discontinued their continuing education program. And I find, many with maybe more of a technical background and interest in data, not just content. Now ontologies are of a greater interest. I keep thinking maybe I'll add another course on ontologies, but I haven't done that. Instead, I did add a chapter on ontologies to the 3rd edition of my book, though, because there's that connection.
And can you just explain a little bit about that relationship between taxonomies and ontologies? Some people that are coming into this field, or at least hearing these words for the first time, they may think that these are also competing methodologies or competing implementation methods, but really they're complementary.
Right. Yeah, they are complementary. Well, in the simplest way, taxonomy has these broader, narrower relationships, and that's how the concepts are related to each other, just broader and narrower. The generic related that exists in thesaurus and a thesaurus could also be in a taxonomy. But an ontology then defines the relationships. You have semantic relationships as far as something as a belonging to or a part of or supports or is located in or has a feature or has a price or there are all these different, you can define it any way you want. And that opens up various possibilities for even expanding search and navigation and discovery and exploring of for content too, not just data, but it does enable the access of data too. And then there's also additional attributes for the concepts. So it's, in ontology, they'll be called something else as far as entities, but that's enriching it with more detail as well. And so there's a lot in there. But the taxonomies and ontologies are connected if they're built on the same data model. And that's why I refer to SCOS and others of the World Wide Web Consortium, the semantic web standards. If they're built on the same standards, then they connect and they're interoperable, and you can build a taxonomy / ontology, just kind of as one large knowledge model.
David Layton is just saying, great session, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for leading this, Joaquin. Thank you, David. So let me ask you this. You're talking about interoperability. You're talking about open standards. You're talking about the compatible nature of taxonomies and ontologies. If you begin with one, you can then extend it to the other. That's sort of the basis of this statement. Now, let me ask you, buy versus build. Sometimes people don't want to start from scratch. Sometimes they want to use a pre-existing schema for their taxonomy or their ontology. What has been your experience with that?
Okay, we see what's interesting with ontologies is there are some that are definitely created for that purpose of reuse, and they're rather high level, maybe called an upper ontology. And so we do see a lot of reuse of that and then extended down deeper. It's less common to say, find taxonomies out there for reuse, but there are some. In fact, there is one company, I'm only aware of one, called WAND, WAND, that builds and sells industry taxonomies. They're a little expensive, but if you want to get started. But the idea is it should be a start, even one of these taxonomies, and you should then customize it for your own use case. It may get too detailed in some areas and not detailed enough in others. And even the synonyms, the alternative labels, may not be completely relevant for your context. I've looked at the WAND taxonomies, and actually it's good that they don't have too many alternative labels, probably too few, because too many may get you the wrong results. Too few, you can always add more easily. So if you do get a taxonomy from another source, make sure that, obviously from WAND you can edit it, but if from some other sources that share them, they may have some license restrictions. Oh, you can't use it, you can't modify it, or you can't use it for commercial reuse, just educational purposes or something like that. And I do have some presentation and information on that on my website about, and in my book about reusing taxonomies, but it is certainly an option as a starting point.
Talking about licensing and things being expensive,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people don't have the budget or the buy-in to be able to invest in some of these things to start, but there are open source options, right?
Yeah.
So you also mentioned SCOS, and SCOS is an acronym for Simple Knowledge Organization System. So are there open source SCOS taxonomies, ontologies that people can download and appropriate for their unique situation?
Yeah, I would say most are based in SCOS. Now, as far as downloading a free one that you can reuse, there's not a lot on that. If it's If it's completely free, it's because they said it's come from some, governmental or educational or professional association, but they don't want you just to change it. You have to give them credit, maybe. So there is a directory of control vocabularies, including taxonomies, called BARTOC, BARTOC.org. So that could be a place to look. But I think I was also wondering where you were going about open source, about tools. Of course, you see, if it's a small taxonomy, yeah, you create it in a spreadsheet, but then you don't have much governance over it. It can't expand. There'll be errors. So I definitely recommend using a tool for taxonomy management. Now, of course, in many systems, including web content management systems, there is some feature for managing metadata and tags and categories. But it's it's maybe a little rudimentary, and it's only in that one system. And maybe you want to, align your taxonomy and your web content management system with some internal enterprise content management system, and a digital asset management system, and a CRM, and all these other different systems. That's where it really makes sense to have a dedicated taxonomy management system that's connected and integrated with these others. And those can be expensive systems. There are some that are open source, that it's or free. They're a little harder, to use. Maybe, one of them is called VocBench, VocBench. That was, developed out of a university in Rome, Italy, for the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization. It's also used by the Publishing Office of the European Union. But it's not something you can easily set up yourself. You need to have a client server environment. I haven't been able to set it up myself.
So can you just talk a little bit more about, from that implementation standpoint, you have some SCOS library or some SCOS controlled vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to integrate it into a system. Where is the first step in just starting lean and mean? As you said, it's better to start small, and then as you find and discover more information, you
Yeah.
add that knowledge map, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't be creating a SCOS taxonomy without a tool. I don't, you know, do the markup tags by hand. I know some people who are really into coding do that, but I don't. What, like I said, there are usually, what people do is they start out creating a taxonomy in a spreadsheet, and then they upload the spreadsheet into a taxonomy management system. And then they get help from the vendor in integrating the system into others. But that's not an inexpensive way to do it. But that's the common way that it's done. Yeah, there are some free SCOS editors. I've looked that up, I think, on Wikipedia, and I compiled I even have a list of them in the software chapter of my book. I obviously haven't tried them all out. There's a list of them for those who want to go that route.
We have a question from Marianne. What are external factors, example given stakeholders, that influence taxonomy development?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely stakeholders. Sometimes the implemented system, the front end, if it's some kind of a web content management system, has limitations or capabilities that influence the taxonomy. Definitely, you have to kind of work around that. And when it comes to even designing the hierarchy, that's something to consider, how it will display. But does it support the synonyms in the user search, and does it support the synonyms in the tagging, one or the other or both? Those are some things to consider. The tagging method. Is it manual? Is it automated? Is it going to be done with rules, or is it going to be done with statistics or other AI methods? Even the subject domain. Is it deep and technical or not? I mean, there are many factors.
I see that there were two questions that
Mhm.
missed my eyes.
Okay.
There's a question from Michelle Roel, and
Okay.
thank you, Karen Bleakley, for pointing that out. By the way, uh,
Okay.
Michelle is saying nice distinction between browsing and being served information. I wonder if you have seen a generational preference in your work. Does Gen Z want to be served rather than browse?
Oh, that's a good question for an information architect. I haven't done that kind of user research. Uh, it could be.
Okay, so there's another question from Frock Becker. This is a theoretical question, but what would you distinguish tagging from classifying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not just, no, it's not theoretical. So, a content item, whether it's a page or document, an image, can receive multiple tags, and they can be more, specific about, oh, this topic occurs in here. There may be a few sentences about it. There's some information about it. Um, Whereas classifying, it's kind of like instead of what is applied to the content, it's like where does the content go? In what category does it go? And then it's more mutually exclusive. And um, while in the digital environment, of course, a content item could go into more than one class or classification. Traditionally, it doesn't. But then classification, the mutual exclusiveness has other benefits, because if you want to do some statistical comparison and analysis of what's in what, then it's there's no duplication or overlap. In fact, I did just give a little video talk through I've posted it on LinkedIn, um, comparing a taxonomy to a classification system. So that also kind of ties in with this, question, a taxonomy being more like a set of tags that are arranged in a hierarchy, compared to a classification system that has distinct classes or categories.
Lastly, I want to just make a comment, and then maybe we can bounce off
Mhm.
of that for the remaining 2 minutes. I interviewed you for a podcast, and in that
Mhm.
podcast, you talked about how you supported Walter Kruger. What's the name of that company? The legal firm.
Okay, Walter's Crewer. Wait,
Walter's Kruger. There you go.
yeah, I had done a project for them in the past. Yeah.
And they are a company that is focused on creating legal content
No,
and
no.
other.
Well, part of it does. They're a very big company. They also do, but that division was, yes. Mhm.
So the division that you're particularly supporting, you help them arrest and build the taxonomy around the concepts and definitions, irrespective of the language. The language was then the superior label to the underlying concepts, right? Conceptual models.
Okay. Yeah, it's not just that. I think maybe that's just an example, but the idea of a concept versus a term or label that uses, of course, language. And I didn't have a chance to really get into that, although you may have seen I referred to concept and term. So we talk about things, not strings. A concept is a thing, and a string is a string of text. So a concept has a label. This is something that is included in the SCOS data model. It refers to concepts, and concepts may have any number of labels, uh, which is one preferred, that is, can be displayed label in each natural language. So you can have a preferred label in English and French and Spanish, and then any number of alternative labels in any number of languages. And some are even designated, some of the alternative labels can be designated as hidden labels. We don't want them to display. They're only to support search, not browse. So that's the difference between the language and the concept.
Last question. Rolf Bruno is asking, are term bases and glossaries considered taxonomies or a tangent to taxonomies?
Yeah, they're tangent. Uh, but I mean, you could, have. it's really kind of the use. It's not just that taxonomies are an arrangement of concepts that are used to tag and find content, and a glossary is the identification of important terms that need definitions because they're discussed and they're used. It could be that they're used in technical documentation or in translation management or other aspects, but it's not for tagging and retrieving content. And so, in fact, a glossary or terminology may have more specific and detailed terms than are needed for the taxonomy that's just to tag and retrieve multiple documents on a subject. And but there's definitely overlap too, so they can be linked, which is a good idea.
I just want to say that Frock is saying great explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Malaki is saying thanks, Heather. Great outline of the different capabilities of IA and AI and the synergies between them while keeping the effect on humans in focus.
Yeah. The
And
questions are actually displaying. I see them, but I don't know if everybody else sees them. I don't know. Yeah.
In the Q&A?
Yeah, what you're reading.
Oh,
When you select them, I see them.
there's another interface that is user-facing that provides a different set of questions. But Karen Bleakley is saying, great talk as always, Heather.
Thanks, Karen.
So with that, Heather, thank you very much. I
Yeah.
highly encourage you all to take her workshop tomorrow if time permits. The session itself will be recorded if you want to attend it at a later time. Otherwise, thank you very much for showing up.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me and hosting and moderating. And and I look forward to listening to the rest of the presentations today.
Great. We'll have a brief intermission, and then you'll have a little intro from me. So talk to you guys soon.
Okay.